vertical arms, are they the bee's knees? Well, let's discuss a little bit. First and foremost, this design that I have here, this design was set forth by Richard Howarth. He is the designer of the hyper-low frames, and he doesn't even release this frame yet. And I mean, I didn't really want to take it from him, and I okayed everything by him to kind of present it, and I'm saying it's his general layout design, 110% his, and it's a freaking awesome design. It's very, very elegant. But I've just remixed it to the way I think it works, and just updated the design. He has a race version of this, but this is just kind of an elaboration on his design. So go check out his YouTube channel, go check out his page. I personally think that his hyper low acrobatic frame is probably one of the best ones on the market. If I was to recommend an acro frame, that's the one I would recommend. So that being said, let's discuss if the vertical arms are any difference really in the vertical arms. So, well, before that, the motor mounts are the most pain part of these designs. Getting the motor mounts is just trouble in general. So I'm having them custom made, and I have a design that Brain 3D made for me, Brian Phillips made for me, and he does really fantastic work. And it's being made by a manufacturer out of 7075 aluminum. It's pretty darn beefy. I actually might thin it out because it's so darn beefy. The arm mounts that I'm using on this frame right now they come from this frame over here. Now, this is the Banggood clone of the Karearearearewareaa Talon frame, which is an awesome design. Although I think it's kind of complicated because it comes with a lot of hardware and a lot of pieces that I didn't even want to take the time to figure out how to put it together. So I just put it together here to see if it has any flex in the yaw direction. And I'll discuss that in a minute. It comes with crossbars. I mean, this frame, it's a nice frame. It's a really nice design. The fake version is very good. I mean, it's fine. I don't know if I haven't compared it side by side to the real thing, but I have held the real thing, and it's honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell a difference a day later between the two. But the arm design is interesting because it's really small, and they put these cross beams on it to, I think, just strengthen the arms up, because they were probably finding that it breaks like right here, right in this joint here, because they're not really braced too greatly, and when you do flex it, you get flexing from right here at the joint. But anyways, I just used the motor mounts off this frame because the original company, the Karearearearewareaa company, wanted $75 for a set of 4 motor mounts. So this frame was $60, so it was cheaper, and I just needed them for testing, so I picked up that frame for testing. So now let's discuss the differences that I felt with the vertical arms. So let's show you what I've been comparing it to. I've run 3 different motors on this frame already, and I've been, just testing a whole bunch of things, and I really screwed up the design of this frame. Actually, the pieces fit together way too tight, and if I took out all the screws, it would still fly perfectly fine as if nothing ever happened, because I screwed up the main plates. The plates do not line up perfectly, and it's just ultra tight to put together. Of course, I've already fixed that in the next prototype. And you probably noticed that the frame changed, and I repaired the arm. And repairing the arm was surprisingly easy. It was not even remotely as difficult as I expected it to be. I just unscrewed these 4 screws out of the bottom and left the back one in, flexed the plate up, tapped the arm to open it, and then flexed the plate up enough to just slide the arm out and slide a new one in. And that was it. And it's just 1 screw to undo the motor mount and put a new arm into the motor mount. So it was really no problem at all. And so one major thing that I noticed about the frame design is that it is so super duper solid and rigid. I mean, there's no way you're going to get any flex in it in this direction, in the XY direction. You're not going to get any kind of flex. And I think that is contributing to the noise floor of the frame, and I can distinctly see a very obvious, very clear resonance frequency for the frame when I look at the what's called the graph on the black box analyzer. And so I had to tune my filters to that specifically, and I could only turn off the first filter. Now, I think that may have to do with the fact that it's just so squeezed tight together that it's just not, the frame is not moving correctly, but I'm not sure. I have to do a lot more testing on that to find out. So I'm going to show you what I'm comparing it to. So this is one frame. This is another one, which I took the motors off. As I said, I've flown 3 different motors on here already. These AOK Fly motors were originally on this frame, and I'm also comparing it to this frame, which is the ZMX FinX30, FonX30, which it's kind of like a whole level on its own. I can't really compare it to everything, but it's something else to compare to. So between this frame and this frame, I flew both of them for several packs, and I wrote down exactly how long I was flying for, what kind of flying I did, and just trying to see if there was any numerical difference between the two quads. And after flying 20 packs on each one, I did the estimations of calculation, and I averaged things, and it looks like I'm getting 17, at least the numbers say 17% more flight time on the vertical arm frame. Now, it's really it's not exactly scientific in any possible way, but there might be some notion that having the vertical arms, or just skinny arms on an acro style frame, can potentially lead to higher efficiency. That's kind of, it's hard. I'm just saying that because I just seem to have a notion for that. And also, when I'm personally flying it myself, I feel like I have a little bit more time, and the milliamps are not counting up as fast. Of course, I could very well just be fooling myself, but it's just something I feel. Aside from that, let's talk about the structure of the frame and a lot of things that people want to know. So, the first discussion is, do the arms act like a wing when you're flying forward and generate some lift? So there's a couple theories behind this. First and foremost, if you're racing, this video is not about racing, it's primarily about acro, but if you are running a racing frame with vertical arms like this, and I'm not talking about the box structure around the arms, I haven't looked at those, I haven't tried those at all, but this particular kind of frame, if you're running it as a race frame, we're usually flying like this, somewhere between 65 and 75 degrees tilt. And at that high tilt, yes, maybe there's a small chance that the arm is directing the airflow down and it's acting somewhat like a wing. Maybe. But once you come down from that steep tilt, once you come down to about 50 degrees maybe or something, the attack angle of the arm is so drastic that I don't think the air, it's not acting like a wing anymore. It can't even begin to act like a wing because the air is just delaminating off the back of the arm, so it can't flow over the arm, so it's just generating a whole bunch of drag. I have a hard time believing that it's acting like a wing. I have another theory as well. I think that the arm is so encased in the prop thrust that it never actually sees the forward movement of air. And that's just my notion, because I mean, there's so much thrust coming off this disc that, I mean, what makes you think that there's air that's actually hitting the arm and moving down? There's no flow of air like this. It's all just flowing into the discs and down, and so it's just the center of the body. Of course, like in a dive or a fall or something, maybe it has more drag on the arms. Maybe the body is more aerodynamic because it's not like a wiffle ball with holes all over it for air to travel around. Who knows? Hard to tell. But I don't think it's acting like a wing. And there's also two sources that have told me, very credible sources that have told me, that the thrust actually doesn't come off the disc like in a downward motion, a vertical motion, and which I understand too. The air is kind of flung out off the disc, but they're saying that most of it is flung out off the disc, and air actually does travel through the blade and hit the arm, and it does cause drag if you're not at a high tilt. I don't particularly believe that one, but it's another thought, which, and I'd really love to see some wind tunnel tests or something of some sort to show us what is actually going on. I'm just doing some real world testing to find out. Okay, so the next thing, is there yaw movement in actual normal flight? In this frame, no. I mean, it's so rigid that there's no way the motor has enough yaw to, bend the frame enough to have that kind of a movement. Even when I do look at the black box, I don't see any yaw noise. I really only see just general noise. The yaw noise floor is not any higher or lower than the pitch or the roll. So it leads me to believe that there is no particularly big issue in the yaw direction. Okay, and the next thing, does the arm break more often because it's vertical, and now when you hit, it can potentially flex back? To which I'd say, I've slammed this frame into the ground, into things plenty already, and I only broke an arm when I ran into a tree, like straight up directly. Like, there's really no arm that could have survived that hit. At the end of the motor as well, it was an oblique hit, and oblique hit is very important to think about, because when we do crash, we don't really crash like this. We don't run into stuff like this. We crash like this at an oblique angle. And both of these frames, when you're hitting at an oblique angle, well, it's kind of like the same angle. It's just 90 degrees rotated. So it's hard for me to believe that one is stronger than the other. That being said, this arm is thicker because I wanted to compensate for the yaw, the potential yaw issue, so it might even hold up more. I'm actually more worried about, even though the arm broke in the last one, it's because I put this hole over here, and it's a really poorly placed hole intended to make it lighter, you can see here. So I've already taken that off, and I've redesigned the whole arm already too. But I am more worried about the main body breaking instead of the arms, because it's just so rigid that there's no flex, there's no give in the frame. It will just crack if it gets a really hard knock. Another thing that people might be wondering about, well, does the arm protect the motors? Because now there's so much less motor protection around the edge. I would say no, there's not as much motor protection on this arm, and I have considered redesigning the motor mount to have the same finger extensions as on my previous guitar style design. I don't know, I might do it, I might not do it. It depends on how much it weighs, and if I think that it'll actually help protect the motor given the now weird structure of the mount setup. Another thing is, people might be wondering, will the motor mount break, and is there any movement or play or anything in the motor mount? I have found absolutely none, and I have slammed this into a bunch of trees already, and I've no problems at all. The motor mount is solid. Even this relatively frail looking motor mount from Banggood has been totally solid, so I have no concerns about the motor or the motor being kind of like hoisted above everything else. It's a non-issue. So now let's discuss the general performance of the quad. So this is a more interesting discussion to me, because I felt kind of a very drastic difference. The first thing that I felt about this frame is that I can't tell if the vertical arms are doing anything at all when you're flying. I think that there might be slightly more accurate throttle control. I feel like the throttle does just a little bit more at low range. Hard to say, really hard to say. It's just a notion that I had. Other than that, I don't feel any kind of performance difference with the vertical arms. It does sound just a smidget quieter, which is nice, but again, that's just a smidget, and what makes it more quiet than the vertical arms is dropping a couple of grams, and this frame is actually 3 grams lighter than this frame over here, so I don't think that makes a difference, but I think my overall build is a little bit lighter on this frame, so it just sounds a little bit quieter. And now for the most significant difference that I felt. This frame is a slammed frame, and what I mean by slammed frame is not the 15mm build height, which, by the way, is not necessarily annoying to build. I know there's a lot of people concerned about the 15mm build height. The redesign that I have will allow you to place a 30x30mm board to one side and then a half 30x22mm board to the other side, so you can stack your VTX and your flight controller and whatever side by side. It fits the Asgard fine, and this is a really crummy job of installing the Asgard that I've done here because I just don't have time to build. I'm not concerned about the 15mm build height. I also know and believe that the 20x20mm mounting electronics will be the future of most frames, because I know that there's some 20x20 boards coming out that are freaking amazing. So that's still left to be seen, and I've redesigned it such that you can put 2 20x20mm boards side by side in here. So for the future, I don't think this will be an issue. Also, the Runcam Sparrow and Foxier Monster Micro will be coming out soon as well, so we will now have micro cameras in 16:9 and 4:3, so no concerns there, and that's just about that. But the slam nature of the frame, having the battery on the same level as the motors, not good. Did not like it at all. It was not nice, and immediately I noticed that the control feel is much more dull. The yaw is just not there. Just like throw yaw out the window. And I had to up my rates pretty notably. I had to up them a lot, maybe almost 100 degrees per second in each axis to get similar control feel, and still it felt a little bit dull. Now this could be a positive for you, because that dull feeling might allow you to fly a little bit smoother, kind of, but to me it just feels like a little lack of control. And there's two theories I have about this. The one theory comes from Mr. Steele, actually, which I heard in a podcast that he did a while ago, where there was a frame that Get FPV made, and then they came out with a skirt that goes around the frame. It's like an alien-style build, and he said that the skirt was really awesome because it would protect all the electronics from all this grass and all the crap that would fly into your quad. But as soon as he put it on, he noticed that yaw was just gone. He did not have any more yaw control. And he says that's because you need some air flowing through the frame. You need somewhere for this, the thrust that's being thrown off the prop to go through the frame somehow. There needs to be some freedom of movement of air. And that kind of sort of makes sense because it's kind of like blowing on itself, so it can't really execute the yaw motion as efficiently, but also kind of sort of half doesn't make sense. I'm not sure. But that's the only explanation I have for the reason why the yaw is less, is because there's a battery right in the middle of the frame and blocking all the lateral movement of air from off the prop disc. Otherwise, I don't understand why the yaw has been reduced. And in addition to that, the pitch and roll have also been reduced, which I might say for the same reason, or I would also think that maybe because the battery is now moved so far down, the CG is actually below the prop line. It's actually just like right at above the motor base. And so I'm feeling that weird kind of throw around of under battery maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's actually a good thing. Maybe the flight controller is having such an easy time managing all of the axes that I can just up my rates all the way and deal with the high rates and get the benefit of having fast rates while still having super like low, soft, nice feeling mid-stick area. I'm still testing that. Right now I've upped the rates to the point where I'm comfortable on this quad, but still when I strap a battery to this quad or the previous quad with these motors on, I hugely preferred this setup, just the basic general Alien setup. And this setup has the CG line just like a millimeter below the prop line. And you can definitely feel it. It's much more nimble and much more agile with the lower rates, and it's just, it responds much easier to your stick inputs. And I know I can tune that and I can fix that on this frame, but I haven't yet figured out if that's a positive or a negative thing. So I have tweaked the frame a little bit, I have dropped the arms a little bit, I have arms coming that are going to give me a 20mm build height to raise the battery up. I'm going to be doing a bunch more testing to find out what the actual cause of this control loss is. Maybe it's actually a good thing, maybe I'll just up my rates and it'll end up being good. I have played with the rates, I'm going to keep playing with them a little bit more. There's a number of things that I have to improve about the frame to make it worthwhile. Other than that, I think it's an awesome frame, and I actually think it's a very good like low altitude specialist frame, because the camera is just so darn low to the ground when you're flying forward like this that it's really easy to just skim the ground, just skim it right off the ground, and it gives you this extra degree of confidence that you know how high you are off the ground, because I mean you can see about that. And when we're flying at angles, this is about the angle where we fly at with an acro frame, so you can see the prop line and the camera floor is about the same height, so it gives you this like ability. It's like driving a truck that has a flat rear back and you have a window back there, so you can see exactly where your trunk ends, so it's really easy to park. That's it. This is just information that I have gathered by flying this frame for a couple of days and trying to do some testing on the frame. I don't know if any of it is true. I don't know if any of it is correct. My thoughts on vertical arms for racing, still unsure. My thoughts of vertical arms for acro, still unsure. For sure, this frame is much slower than this frame. This one, in particularly this one with the iPhone X30. I don't know if that's because of the motors or not, but this quad that I have here is drastically better than this quad. And I don't know why, because they're the same weight with the camera and whatever on it. If I move the camera around, it's the same exact weight, same exact flight controller, everything is the same between these two quads except for the motors. And previously, I did not feel such a drastic difference between this quad and this quad when it had the AOK Fly motors on it. So I'm still unsure what's going on. This is just my initial discussion. Hope it was informational. Please, if you know what on earth is going on and why I'm getting this weird feel for this frame, please let me know. And don't forget to floss.